Okay, today we're going to make tofu so as to emulate ground beef, ground sausage, ground pork, whatever. There's a lot of fat in ground beef, ground meat, even after you drain it off. So we are going to use about a little over a third of a cup of olive oil. I'm putting all my spices. We're making Italian today, but you can use this for anything that takes ground meat. So I've got my fire a little over low, just a little higher, just to get it good and hot and let these spices bloom. So I like to get all this started and let the spices bloom while I cut up the tofu. So we want to make sure not to burn the spices. So we're going to leave that. Going to head over and get started cutting the tofu. Now, I'm going to open the package and remove the brick. Now, I like to get as much water out of this as I can, because the whole process is to dry the tofu out and make it have some texture so as to satisfy our need for ground meat type stuff. So I smush it. I dribble all the water I can out without breaking the brick, because when you go to slice this, it's better if it's in one solid brick. So head over to the chopping block. We are going to cut this in 1/4 inch pieces. I'm going to make little stacks of about a 1/3 of the brick. Once I get that about at 1/3, then I'm going to do all 3 until I'm done. So we're trying to chop this up small to be very consistent, and I just want everything to be nice and stacked up, nice and neat. Trying to make this easy, because if you get this all messed up, it's just hard to control. You can't put this in a food processor. I have tried, and all it does is turn it into mush, and you can never get the consistency you want. So I've done this many times, and it does work. So once you get everything all done, the last slice you kind of have to go laterally. Make all 3 stacks about the same. Now, I'm using a fairly sharp knife because you don't want to crush all this. You want it to stay in nice, neat chunks. So I'm going to cut it again in about a 1/4 inch. I'm trying to keep everything lined up. So that's why we kind of keep everything in neat, straight lines. Keep working on this until you get it all chopped. And then we are going to chop it into small pebbles. Now that it's nice and stacked and neat, I turn it and cut it as small as I can get it, trying to keep all the pieces uniform and to avoid having any large pieces. Because the large pieces tend to, if people are trying to enjoy tofu for the first time, they would rather not see big chunks because it's going to gross them out. So this is how I do it, and it works really well. We're going to re-chop this whole stack, and I'm constantly looking for bigger pieces. So, like I said, so there's not any giant pieces. This is all going to cook down much smaller than what we've got right now, because we're trying to reduce the amount of water in this. Also, we don't want to put any onion or green pepper or anything like that, because that just adds moisture to it, and the whole process is meant to firm up the tofu and get the water out of it. So after chopping it all up, getting it ready, checking all my pieces for large chunks, we are going to transfer this to the pan. Now I've been checking that periodically. I've got it set at low now, but it's good and hot. If you have to, hey, turn the fire off and just let it go. This is a cast iron pan, so it's going to stay pretty warm. I just turned the heat back up to a little over low. Lower, maybe a third higher than low. We want this to cook, sizzle a little, but we don't want it to be really frying. So it's a good saute temperature. And I mix it up and get all the oil and spices that have bloomed coated onto the tofu. Now, if you see any big chunks, you kind of chop them up with your spatula. Now, as I do this, I do not want to have this sit for too long because all of the tofu on the bottom layer will glue itself together and then you have to break it up. So we're about halfway there. You can see it sizzles a little. And I keep stirring it probably every 3 to 4 minutes. While I'm doing this, because this is a 30-minute process, I'm chopping all my vegetables, regardless of whether I'm making Italian, sloppy joes, Mexican food, whatever it takes. So the spices vary for whatever the recipe is. So I stir this every once in a while. I go back to chopping, stir it. Now it's starting to get done. There's a little steam coming off, so we're going to cook it a little longer. But you'll know it'll be firm. Steam will stop coming out. And now it is ready. So you can add it to whatever you want. It'll keep that texture, and then you can cook the way you want to. And there you go, 30 minutes of actual cooking time. Thanks.